Aloha. Welcome to the FFF podcast. I'm Jim Hochberg. We're going to talk today about three things that are very consequential that I wish weren't that way. And so Eva and I will be right back. Hi, Eva.
Welcome to the world according to Jim.
Oh, I'm there all the time.
You are. Well, you're bringing us all in, and that's.
Oh,
I don't
boy.
know if this is going to be
This is gonna be
exciting or scary. It is because you're opening up your mind to the world, Jim. You're letting us all into how you think and how you feel, and I'm very excited to find out what are the three things today.
So I have 9 minutes to cover each one.
All right. So get into your first pet
So
peeve.
the first thing that I think is very consequential.
Well, before you do that, why don't you explain very quickly how something becomes a pet peeve to you, so people will know why does something suddenly become irritating to you? Is there a pattern?
Well, I didn't look at it as an irritating pet peeve. I looked at it as what's wrong with the world and why.
Ah, okay. All right. Continue now.
So that's why the consequential nature is important. So
Okay.
The first one is what really bothers me, and I wish it wasn't like this, and it's been happening since the Catholic Church had two popes in two different towns, and they were disagreeing with each other many moons ago. And the problem that I'm talking about is disagreement in public from different church leaders within the Christian church that claim to be Old and New Testament based. Because as you and I know, it makes it really hard at the legislature.
Yes, it does. I remember during same-sex marriage, right? The legislature asked, well, which Christian church believes this? And it still happens today where you've got different people coming up from this church with some kind of, reason they oppose or in some cases support while another church is opposing.
But let's not stay in the present. Let's go back to when the Catholic Church had the two popes, and then they had the Greek Orthodox and the Roman Catholic Church, and then the Protestant Reformation,
Lutheranism,
and then
yes.
all the Protestants that just keep splitting and making their own versions of stuff. And it's mostly because they disagree on the theology. But Jesus said he wanted the church to be one. So it bothers me. So one of the things about it is that the world doesn't get to see that unity in the church that Jesus apparently was aware was necessary for the church to have integrity in the unchurched world. Even Paul said it in the Bible. You guys run around saying, I follow Apollos, I follow Paul. No, you don't. You follow Jesus. But then, and it's really dumb, And today, on the internet, there was a news piece, which I couldn't believe, and I'm going to share it.
Okay.
On April 19th, 2024, from 8 to 10:30 p.m., a Catholic university located at Hawk Hill in the Perch Building is having what they're calling SJU Pride, the Center for Inclusivity and Diversity, a drag show event in the church. This is crazy. Crazy.
Well, I can tell you there's always, so we're not going to just pick on Catholics. So hopefully everybody stays tuned, that the Catholic Church is such a large church, right? There's a lot of people in the Catholic Church, a lot of leadership. There's this and there's that. But I do know that when organizations, a lot of people blame the bishop or blame the cardinal or blame whoever's in charge, but they don't realize a lot of these organizations are under their own leadership. Now, they do fall under the Catholic diocese in the sense that they're Catholic or a Catholic organization, but it doesn't mean that the local bishop or the local cardinal has control over that institution. What they do, I believe, have control over is whether they can call themselves Catholic. Because if you remember, there was a Catholic school that begun hanging the pride flag, and they were told, because the local bishop there did not run the school, the bishop asked them to take the pride flag down, and they refused. And so basically the bishop said, then we're going to not allow you to call yourself Catholic anymore. So I know that there are some ways that these organizations can do these kind of things, and then the local ordinary will have to, take control over that. So I think that's the problem, right? Is that everybody follows their own God.
Well, and that's what I was going to say. So today, within what we would call Christendom, which would include the Greek Orthodox Church, the Catholic Church, the Roman Catholic Church, the Episcopal Church, all the Protestant denominations that I can't even name them all, hardly agree on any theology. That's why they've all started their own versions of church, right? And it's like, if you don't agree that to be born again, you have to speak in tongues, then you're not really a Christian. Or if you don't believe
in prophecy
that the Eucharist is really the body and blood, then you're not really a Christian. Or if you don't believe whatever. And what struck me when I was thinking this through is that's really pharisaical. It's what the Pharisees were doing. They were judging based on, oh, my sin is so small, I'm so glad I don't commit these big sins like that guy over there.
And what's happening in the spiritual realm when this is happening? I'm telling you what's happening in the spiritual realm is you've got demons on the side clapping and cheering that the church is so busy fighting itself that it doesn't have time to stand up and fight the real enemy.
Yeah. And it's not good for anybody, but it's not good for people that are not in the church, because what they see is chaos. And so everything seems equally relevant, equally true, whatever. But it's not good for the people in the church, because they are not having the unity within the body of Christ that Jesus tells us. And you know how I know Jesus said it? Because it's in red font.
It's interesting because I have pastor friends in a lot of the Christian denominations. So I have Baptist pastor friends. I have Calvary Chapel pastor friends. I've got First Assembly pastor friends, Word of Life, Hope Chapels, New Hope pastors, right? And it's interesting because when I'm talking to them about Jesus, all I see is love and grace and mercy and agreement and moving forward. When we're talking about what the Bible says, we're moving forward, we're in agreement. But I always get nervous when we deviate from that path and then we start getting into what my church believes. Well, my church says this and my church says that. And that's great. I mean, people have a choice to go to whatever church. And so I'm not going to argue with you on where God tells you to go to church. And if God is telling you to go to a Baptist church or a Calvary church or a Assembly of God church, go and be blessed, because you're going where God has called you to go. And I know some Catholics that have strong belief in Jesus and they know Jesus. So I'm not going to get into this. And I have the same pet peeve you do, because I think what happens is a lot of people then start getting into the spirit of, well, where do you fellowship? And then you tell them. And then
before we run out of time, what I want us to do, and please note it in the comments if you have an idea, what can the church do specifically? What are things the people in the church can do now to increase the unity and decrease the disunity? Because that's what the church needs to move to. So that's one of my things that I think are a problem.
Yep. And then also put in the comments if you agree,
So the second thing is having to do with what's happening in the United States of America with self-government. Because, and we talk about this different angles and different topics and stuff a lot, but the idea that the government is a thing and that the government did this, the government whatever, is the opposite of self-government, because self-government is not a thing. It's not a noun. It doesn't exist. It is a service to the people who are compelled to pay for it, whether they like or dislike the service being rendered. And in order to have a real strong self-governing population, whether it's in a neighborhood or in a town or in a county or in a state or the whole country or a region, we have to stop thinking that the government is something else. Like it's not part, we're not it. We are the government. We are self-governing.
Are you going to talk about your neighbor's car?
And if we don't if we don't behave, and if we don't think, speak, and act as though we are the government, then we don't participate.
I think about that all the time, because when I'm at the Capitol, and I'm honest that I wasn't at the Capitol this year as much as I've been in the past. We were tracking a couple of bills, whereas before we tracked so many. But when I'm at the Capitol building and I'm watching the way some, not all, but some of the legislators treat people who are testifying, I sit there and I think, wait, that person, whether you agree with them or not, is paying your salary. You should at least treat them with respect and dignity, even if you disagree with them. And I think we've lost that simple courtesy of just listening to one another. So I agree. I think people aren't, and people, because they're tired of getting beat up, Jim, they're tired of dealing with the government, because they put them all in that box you're talking about. That's the government. The government is making
the thing is, though, that's to harken back to C.S. Lewis. That's like the demons in the screw tape letters messing with people.
Mm-hmm.
So Article 1, Section 1 of the State of Hawaii Constitution says all political power are inherent in the people.
Yes.
So that means that each person has exactly the same amount of political power constitutionally, should they choose to exercise it, as everybody else. The people in the legislature are not supposed to exercise more political power than anybody else, but we let them.
And I like that they're using the word inherent.
Yeah.
So it's something that's already a part of you. It's just your choice to use it. It's kind of like being full of the Holy Spirit. You can choose to just be full of the Holy Spirit and do nothing with that power, or you can go out and sow the gospel seeds, which is what we're called to do as Christians.
Correct. So the interesting thing is, I'm going to use the neighbor's truck. And then I'm going to use the restaurant server.
Okay.
So the government is not the truck across the street from you that your friend, your neighbor owns, that you see the truck because it's parked outside, it's on the road sometimes, but you don't put gas in it, you don't clean it, you don't change the oil, you don't drive it because it's not your truck, right? No. The government is your truck and his truck and the truck next to the neighbor next door and the Volkswagen Bug at Eva's house. Those are all the government in this analogy. So we all should be paying attention to the people that we pay to work for us, giving us the services that the legislature, the city council, the mayor's office, the executive branch, all the offices that we would call governmental offices, they're giving us services. And they're compelling us through taxation to pay for those services, even if we don't want them. Mm-hmm. So we need to know who our servants are by being aware. I mean, they all have names and phone numbers and addresses where they're working for us. We shouldn't just allow them to do whatever they want because we don't care. We need to care.
And this is why I always tell everybody that they need to have a relationship with their legislator, because I would say that there are people that feel like their legislator never does anything good, right? There are people out there that think, no, my legislator is horrible and they just do all these bad things. But I think when you get to know your legislator and you're watching all of the thousands of bills, right, that move through well, I wouldn't say thousands move. Thousands are introduced, maybe hundreds move, and then there's, a handful or so that actually become law. But if you watch them in their movements, you'll find that there's a lot of humanity in all of these legislators.
But the thing is, if you disagree with every single thing your legislator ever says,
Then the report card time comes up
then
in
you
November.
should be.
Yes.
You don't wait till November. No. You, as soon as the last election, as soon as the next election is over, and you know that person's going to be your representative again, at that point you make a decision. I am going to work to find another person that thinks more the way I do, and I will help them get elected. I'm going to start before Christmas, and work for the full 2 years. And we got to own our government.
And I don't know if things have changed today. So if you're a teacher or a student in school today, tell me if things have changed. But I know in our day, if you failed a class, what happened?
I never failed a class. I have no idea.
But if you did, or someone in your class failed,
I guess you take a different one next time.
You take a different one, right? And if you failed too many classes in school,
then you don't graduate.
You don't graduate, right? So, I mean, there's consequences to not fulfilling the obligations you have. So when you're a legislator and you get elected into office, I think that people across the board need to make that decision. When November comes, like you said, you know, they're going to, if they get reelected, then there's still something you have to do. But on that election day, when you're checking that box, you're giving them a report card. And there are no middle grades. There is A and there is F. There is nothing else. So you need to make that decision, you know. Even if you think your legislator is a C or should get a C or a D, the question still remains, do they stay or do they go? And that's what you need to ask.
Yeah. And so our approach to self-government is so different than what the Founding Fathers originally intended. And it goes beyond knowing your legislators and all that stuff. It goes to understanding the Constitution of the United States. It's very short. Understanding the powers and the separation of powers that are supposed to happen. Because right now we're letting the executive branch and the federal government do all kinds of things that are violations of the authority that they have, and the courts have to tell them, no, you're not allowed to do that. Why would we elect people like that? I mean, because a lot of people in the United States are of the philosophy that the ends justify the means, and therefore, yes, let's do whatever it takes to make this result. That's not self-government. That is tyranny.
And that's where we are today, and that's where we've got to change.
So that's my second one. So what I want you guys to think about is, what do we need to do starting today to get self-government back in control of the people that serve us in the government?
And do you think it's possible? I mean, comment below. Is it possible? And if so, like Jim said, how? What do we do to change it?
So the last consequential thing that bothers me, and we see it all over the place.
Bum, bum, bum.
We see it all over the place. That is the denial of creation through the power of God. That is so consequential. It's a foundational, structural component of a correct life.
Oh my God, out of everything you've talked about today, that made my heart sink, because that really is the crux of the evil we're facing today.
Correct. So The Origin of the Species, written by Darwin in the 1850s-ish.
From Galapagos.
The Galapagos Islands.
Yeah, I remembered from the last show.
So, what's the evidence that society has been on a downward spiral of denying creation by the power of God? So Darwin came up with evolution, that species evolve over time. Beaks get longer, legs get shorter,
so
whatever.
It has nothing to do with the creation of a creator.
Exactly. And it didn't have anything to do with macro creation, which is the crazy idea that a single cell amoeba ended up being a human being over billions of years.
Well, I keep waiting for, me to wake up one morning and evolution hit and I'm like 19 again, but that doesn't happen.
That's
I don't know
devolution.
I don't care what it is. I just want it to happen, and it ain't happening. So it goes to show what happens when you believe it's something that ain't possible. Go ahead.
So it's interesting to me that God created everything, and human beings participate in the creation of new human beings
by the coming together Yes, by coming together. Man and woman, man as defined as DNA of a male and DNA of a female. Nothing else will
So
make
you're not
creation.
saying Adam and Steve can make a
I
baby.
am saying that only a DNA female and a DNA male can make a baby together.
Okay. So artificial birth control was a huge step 100 something years ago to keep the Procreative Act from creating new life. Artificial birth control.
A barrier.
Correct.
Yes.
Then there was abortion. Getting pregnant, killing the baby.
No need barrier, because if something happens, you just get rid of the problem.
And then it shifted over a little bit to this gay lesbian rejection of God's plan for the new creation. And now from that, we have men getting pregnant, but they're really women. But
well, you know what? I think it goes back to the whole barrier situation. And I think if you read some of the powerful testimonies that was given way back when contraceptives was becoming a big thing, right? Is you had a lot of religious believers, many of them Catholic, but many of them had concerns that once you step in and you take away the ability for there to be protection, and I'm not talking about contraception protection, I'm talking about the protection of life, right? How life is created. And once you open that door, it means anything to anybody, and you take away any chance of saying what's right and what's wrong. And that's exactly where we're at today.
So the next step was the current transgenderism, actually rejecting God's design for our own personal self. Because basically, if I say I am in the wrong physical body because I'm really not a man, I'm a woman, or I'm neither, and you have to call me plural pronouns or whatever, that is an absolute rejection of the creation by God of you.
But you know what's beyond that? You're right, because I absolutely agree with what you said. But what has happened because of all of that, I am now taught by what society believes that I'm also not to accept you as a white male that's supposed to become horrible
I'm African
to me.
American female.
I am telling
You need to
that
get
when
your
I
eyes checked.
look at you, I'm taught by what I'm hearing out there that you have nothing productive to bring to society. First of all, you're a man. Thank you. Bye. Us women can do everything. We need no man. But I think that's the message that you're talking about has gotten beyond me, what I want, to what I want you to believe. And I think it's expanding and it's getting worse. And what was that spooky movie that was in the 1950s about the darkness and the fog or whatever? I think it was called The Fog or something like that. But anyway, that's what happens. It's like the evil grows. And more stuff is hidden because more and more stuff is allowed. And now you can't even question what somebody else. So we have to just accept everything now.
And it's interesting that you say that the evil grows, because what came after the rejection of God's creative responsibility and authorship for everything, including all the people, is the rejection of the plan for human living that God expressed in the Ten Commandments. There's crime like crazy. There is divorce in marriages. There's corruption in the government.
There's no belief in God.
There's atheism. That is my last.
Yes.
That is my last note. You must have been looking at my paperwork.
I knew where you were going because I've worked with you many a year.
So we need to help our friends that don't believe to see how it is really only possible that God created. And the easy way to do, there was a great book I read once called Fearfully and Wonderfully Made. Great book. Scott Peck, I think, was the author. You should read that book. He goes through the human anatomy in this the systems, the structural system, the vascular system, the organs, and all that stuff. And my favorite part was, because if you think about it, which is something else we don't really take time to do, we just hear things and believe them. But if you think about it, how could things have slowly evolved, especially for mammals, because we will all agree that mammals have a vascular system, which is the blood vessels and the capillaries and all those things. And the purpose of that system is to run the blood through the heart, through all the organs of the body and the brain, and then back in. And if you remember when you were a kid in elementary school, your blood is blue on one side and red on the other side. That's the circulation of the vascular system. Now, vascular system is tissue like the rest of your body, skin, organs, hair, whatever. It's not steel and concrete and rubber. So in order for the vascular system to function at all, it has to have pressure, because if there's no pressure, the blood doesn't move. And it can't have too much pressure, because then you get strokes and heart attacks. And it can't have ruptures in it, because the blood will leak out. And so if it took years and billions of years before the first mammal's vascular system actually survived, there would be no second mammal. You either have a functioning vascular system and you're a living organism as a mammal, or your vascular system doesn't work and you're dead.
Well, I remember there was I heard this as a joke, but I often smile because I could see someone, especially my brother Kevin. My brother Kevin would have been the person asking this, like a kid who raised their hand in class when they were learning about evolution and said, if man came from apes, why are there still apes?
Or why aren't there any almost man apes?
Or, halfway through or whatever. And it just kind of drives teachers crazy, right? These kind of kids. But, I think it's very sad, Jim, that if you remember, again, going back to when we used to talk about the same-sex marriage battle, when we talked about we were going to get to a state in this nation where we were going to go from acceptance to endorsement and then forced
compulsion.
Celebration, right? And this is where we're at. What I don't understand is if you're going to force me to celebrate who you think you are, why can't I celebrate the fact that I'm feminine? And I love my femininity and I want to be feminine. Why can't we appreciate and endorse masculinity? That's good too. If that's what we're teaching our kids, and as Christians, that's what we are doing. We are teaching our kids to accept and enjoy and embrace their feminine and their masculine qualities. Why? Because that's the same qualities that God has. Is God transgendered? No. I've heard that too, that God said they created, so they must. That's their pronoun.
Where the Trinity came
that's
from.
their pronoun.
That's
and
where
I'm
the
like,
Trinity came
no,
from.
that's the true meaning of what they means.
So it's interesting, talking about the pronoun thing really at the end here. What if we started saying we're going to have our own punctuation? So like my punctuation is question mark. So every time you refer to me, it has to be in the form of a question. Or mine is a semicolon, which means you have to have several pieces of a long sentence. Or mine's an
exclamation point, so I want you shouting at me.
Exactly. Want to close this down?
Yes. Well, we appreciate you spending. Jim, thank you for allowing us the window into your soul today, because I think it was a good one. But I have a feeling that our viewing and listeners agree with much of what you said today. So make sure you comment below what you liked, what you agree with, what you didn't agree with. Jim and I might want to chat about that. Make sure you like this video, subscribe, share, and hit that notification button so you know every time we upload a new video. And we will see you all next week. Mahalo, everybody.
Aloha.